Puka Nacua injured during the Rams-Chargers joint practice session. We got the latest and big takeaways from the joint practice session. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button. Trying to get to 14K before the Rams opener, so head over there, join the party. My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the Rams 4 Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, the Rams had a joint practice with the Chargers. We got big takeaways from that. We're continuing our series on the most important Rams heading into the 2024 season. And Puka Nacua leaves the joint practice with an injury. We got the latest, but first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Travis. So the theme that really has followed this team throughout training camp, it reoccurred on Sunday when the Rams had another injury, this time an injury to the rookie sensation from last year, Puka Nacua. And the severity of this injury, we don't know yet. Puka Nacua stayed on the sideline. He was still in full uniform. He was wearing his helmets. He had his pads on, and he had a bag of ice on his right knee. And then following the joint practice, Sean McVay said that he was, quote, not sure about the severity of the injury, hoping this is a nothing burger, but it just continues to put a lot of stress on this team because you don't have guys out there with your ones practicing in these really meaningful joint practices.
So I'm going to give you an option, D-Mac. You want the optimistic take on this, or you want the thing that's probably living in my heart a little more accurately? You want optimistic Travis or a realistic Travis?
Hey, the best Travis is realistic Travis. So give me the heart Travis.
You can't keep stacking this stuff up and have it be nothing. You can't keep telling me that this guy being week to week and that guy being week to week and this guy being week to week and this isn't a big deal and that isn't a big deal. Okay, cool. Some of these things are going to turn into big deals, right? This is just the way that it goes. And through training camp, you're always going to have bumps and bruises. You're going to have little nagging things that are, maybe keep a guy out of a practice here or a practice there. But these are not just some guys. These are the most important guys, arguably, or at least the most important guys not named Matthew Stafford. Puka Nacua is the best wide receiver on this football team right now. Hopefully Cooper Kupp bounces back and has another great year, but they're going to need him to be really good. Yeah, sure. If he's staying in his uniform and he's on the practice, or he's still on the sidelines during practice, he's just got a bag of bag of ice on his knee. Is that the end of the world? No, but it's all of these things added together. It's all these little things. It's Jonah Jackson, Alaric Jackson, Havenstein, Darius Williams, Puka Nacua. Just go right on down the line. It seems like there's one guy after the next, and it just seems like there's a whole lot of little bad luck moments along the way. That's the negative side, the downside. The optimistic side is none of them are a big deal, right? None of these are things that have you go, maybe Jonah Jackson is the one that has your eyebrows go up a little bit and say, hopefully, he's back by sometime in September and he's able to perform at the level that the Rams are going to need him to perform. But most of this other stuff is relatively minor league, is relatively low stakes, is something that you're going to come back. Probably stuff that guys might play through if this were during the regular season. You're going to get lots of opportunities for backups to get real reps. The offensive line, all of those depth pieces, McClendon and Thomas and Noteboom, they all got real reps against the Chargers this weekend, which is good news. But all in all, that's a lot of little bumps and bruises that are starting that up.
Absolutely. You don't really get that cohesion in your training camp when a lot of guys are missing. But as you point out, outside of Darion Kendrick, who's going to be out the entire season with a torn ACL, all of these are week to week. I kind of hate the phrase week to week because it's like he's not available this week. We don't know if he's going to be available next week. It's kind of vague, but you're totally right. I mean, Alec Jackson ankle, Rob Havenstein ankle, Jonah Jackson is the most serious really of the bunch right now with the scapula, the shoulder, and Darius Williams with a hamstring. But Nacua in the offense, I think for me, Nacua, it's a little more meaningful in the sense because one of the reasons why he did fall to the 5th round was he did deal with injuries in college, and that was what really led to him not being as productive as he could have been. And he had a broken foot at Washington, dealt with some injuries at BYU. He has had a little bit of an injury-prone label heading into the draft. That was kind of one thing that followed him. But, yeah, hopefully this is nothing. And there's actually a video of it on Twitter where basically he's in the back corner of the end zone. He's landing. So he kind of landed hard on the knee. And like I said, you got ice packs, you got your helmet, you got your jersey on. If it was more serious than that, you'd have a cart, you have a towel over your head. We kind of know how this thing works. So, I mean, I'm not going to be Dr. Doug or anything like that. But I mean, if it's a sprain, if it's something like that, that's obviously the best case scenario. But I think for Rams fans out there, we're just 1 year removed from what happened in 2022. And going to 22, and we're thinking repeat. We're thinking dynasty, and then you have so many key pieces go down with an injury. And, one thing you could say is, okay, it's better now than in the regular season. For me, I'm saying, you know what? Let's wrap these guys in bubble wrap. Let's have the rest of the training camp on Zoom, and then let's get to the season when we get there, right? But, it's definitely a concern. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I like the idea of training camp on Zoom. That would be interesting.
Right? I mean,
why not? Right? Let's just have everybody stay in their dorm room and we'll all conference in via our laptops. Look, this is still a month to go. The Rams don't play a game. It's more than a month, right? You have more than a month away. You have a lot of time for these guys to get healthy. So the good news is this isn't like you're going to play the Detroit Lions on Sunday night and you got 6 days to get ready and you're missing, 60% of your offensive line and your number one wide receiver. It's not that. There's more time to it. But like you mentioned, when you look at some of these players and their injury history, you look at Nacua in particular, he's an incredibly important part of what they do, and you and I have talked a lot about Puka during the offseason. We talked a lot about Puka during last season, that this is a guy that was found money. This was not just a good pick late in the draft. This was a guy that was one of the best wide receivers in football, and you got him for an incredibly low price considering where he was drafted. Well, that's not really true this year. This isn't found money. You need him to be good. You need him to pop. You need him to be the guy that's catching, 8, 9, 10 passes a game. That's an end zone threat. That is a first down threat. You're going to need somebody that is you're relying on, as opposed to somebody that's like, oh wow, we got a really good player right here. We weren't really thinking that this was going to be what it is. When you're banking on guys and counting on guys and they're unavailable. And again, month to go, long way to go. He wasn't going to play in the preseason anyway, so there's plenty of time to get him healthy, but he's a vitally important player to what they're doing. And it's not like, oh, well, had this happened last year, we don't even talk about it. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know how impactful he was going to be. But now coming in, if he's not your number one, and I think you and I probably both agree that he is the number one, this could be something that we're talking about late into the season. If he gets off to a slow start, if we're in October 1st and here we are sitting there saying, hey, he really hasn't got on track yet. What's going on? Remember today. Remember today is one of those times where it's like, hey, maybe he's just not 100% healthy.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him this season to not just follow up from last season.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, no one's expecting 1,486 yards, 105 catches, and to break records, but that, he's for real, that he's a 1,000+ yards receiver, that he can be among the league leaders in catches. And last season, really, where he needed to improve upon was the drops, right? And a lot of those really can be improved upon during training camp and just continue to build that chemistry as Matthew Stafford's number one. So absolutely, it's missed time if he has to miss time, but I still have a lot of confidence that he's going to be okay and that the offseason work he's done on his body will help this process even more. But yeah, let's just be honest here. I mean, you can't lose Puka Nacua. I mean, outside of Matthew Stafford, I mean, it's not a lot of guys that you really can afford to lose. And Puka Nacua is certainly really in that small group of guys that has to be healthy for this team to have success. But we're going to talk about this joint practice Coming up next with the Chargers, it wasn't pretty. Sean McVay wasn't very happy about it.
No.
We got some big takeaways from the Rams joint practice with the Bolts. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
This episode of Locked On Rams is sponsored by BetterHelp, right? So what are some of your self-care non-negotiables, right? Maybe, you never skip leg day, or maybe you never skip therapy day. When you have a busy life, and I think most of us probably do, when your schedule is packed with your activities, kids' activities, a big day at work, a big work project, and gosh knows how many other things, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes us happy, you happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever, right? So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, which is incredibly important. It's flexible, and it's suited to your busy schedule. So fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and if you and the therapist don't quite connect on the way that you would like, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you. And you can be that everyday listener too. Guys, we are just 34 days from the Rams opener against the Lions. We are Les Josephson, Malcolm Brown days from the Rams opener. By the way, Les Josephson was a baller, Pro Bowl back in 1967. But join that Locked On Rams everyday listener club, guys, because you don't want to miss a thing about your Rams. And definitely watch and listen to every single episode. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe to the pod. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you. But here in our second segment, Travis, we're talking about this joint practice session. We know you lose Puka Nacua, but really the biggest impact on this joint practice session was just not having those starting offensive linemen. They were down 3 starting offensive linemen in Sunday's practice, and you still had Steve Avila, you still had Kevin Dotson who performed well, but the Chargers, they were getting it after it all afternoon. You had lots of sack opportunities. Of course, the sacks in these situations are a little different, but it was a rough day, and Sean McVay said after the game, what I'm interested in, guys, is guys improving every single day. A lot of guys have done that. Sometimes it's been a little bit halted with certain position groups because of the injuries that we've sustained. But again, that's not going to be an excuse for me. Our job is to be able to get this roster ready to go, and we're going to continue to focus on that. Make no mistake about it. Some of these things I saw, particularly offensively, got way higher standards than what we look like today, consistently down and out. So he did not seem very happy with the performance of the offensive line. Warren McClendon had his ups and downs, but really all in all, just not a good day for the Rams.
I think Sean McVay is fascinating in these situations because he's got a reputation, and I think probably fairly, for being able to talk for a very long time. And when he's done talking, you're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was in that. Like, is he happy? Is he not happy? Is he thrilled? Is he angry? Like he's just, there's so much words coming out of his mouth that sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly where he is. But what he also does is he kind of tells you the truth if you listen very, very carefully. And I think that you don't even have to unpack this on him. He didn't like what he saw. Look, the offensive line is banged up. Guess what could happen during the regular season? You could be playing with some backups occasionally. They're going to have to find a way to do it. Like you mentioned, if this were a game, Matthew Stafford would have spent a lot of time on his back this weekend, right? He would have taken a bunch of hits, and we know that is very bad news for every quarterback. This quarterback is no exception. So that is a big part of what we're doing. When he says, as an offensive unit, we need to, this is not who we are, he's incredibly displeased. The guys need to get better day to day. I like it. This is the time to kind of light that fire. This is the kind of time to turn the screw a little bit and make guys tighten up, because that was not going to do the trick. That did not look like a team that was going to the playoffs. That did not look like a team that was on top of everything that they need to do. And I do think that there's a little bit of a different energy between the two teams that we saw this weekend. The Rams are a mostly on the offensive side. It's a veteran team. They know that they have firepower. They've got the quarterback. They can go. Sean McVay's been around a long time. They are the team that is expected to be a pretty good team. The Chargers are brand new. They got a brand new guy in house. They got a guy that's coming in hot, who's a little bit wild, crazy, whatever you want to call Jim Harbaugh, but he brings a certain intensity to his team, and they played with it this weekend. And again, it's a joint practice. It's not a game. There's a long way to go. It's not a red flag or anything like that, but the Rams did not look like a team that was really buttoned up and sharp and ready to go in the first week of August.
Yeah, but that's a great point, though. I mean, when you put things into perspective, you got Harbaugh, who's trying to create a brand new culture with the Chargers. I mean, like I told you before the show, I'm pretty sure they're wearing their game uniforms in this one. And that made a lot of sense for what they're trying to do. The Rams, they're the team that set the trend for not playing your starters in the preseason. They know what they have. They know what it takes. They know the process of winning a Super Bowl in the NFL. And you also have to consider the fact that you're playing backups at key positions with Joe Noteboom and Zach Thomas and Warren McClendon going up against guys like Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and some of their starters. But it wasn't just that, though. I mean, you look at some of the tip balls. Matthew Stafford threw some interceptions because of tip balls. Blake Corum had a fumble. It just, by all accounts, it was sloppy out there. And that's definitely not what you want, especially when backups are getting their opportunities. And anytime, like you said, I mean, I speak fluent Sean McVay too. I mean, for you, you're like McVay 4, I'm probably McVay like 3 or something like that as far as the language classes go. But when he does start to say things like, we've got a lot of good work in, we got a lot of learning opportunities, there was a lot of things to learn from. I mean, that's his like really nice way of saying, like, we made a lot of plays out there that really need to be looked at and improved upon. So, yeah, he definitely seemed a little frustrated after the camp. I think a lot has to do with just the injuries overall, not having the guys in there that he was expecting to have. But still, I mean, Matthew Stafford said after the game, they did a nice job. They got their hands up at the line of scrimmage a couple of times. Tip balls in this league don't hit that in the ground. It was a nice job by them. We had a good creases in the run game. That is a positive. So, yeah, I think, look, it's the first joint practice. Not going to make too much about this. There were some positives, though. And one thing that we've been talking about on this show throughout the entire offseason, the start of training camp, is the potential for the increased use of the tight end. And the tight end position with Colby Parkinson, he made the catch of the afternoon. He had a really nice one-handed catch, and it looks like you had Hunter Long, you had Davis Allen making plays as well, and it looks like that is going to be an area that they're going to emphasize this season. Last year, you had 11 personnel 90% of the time. I think this year that number is going to go down because of the way they're going to use their tight ends in 2024.
Yeah, it does seem like it, doesn't it? It seems like this has been an area of emphasis for them, in the draft and free agency. This is something that they've tried to address. Sometimes you get forced into a situation that maybe you wouldn't do otherwise. Unfortunately, Tyler Higbee got hurt in the last game of the season. Higbee's been a really good player for the Rams for the last several years, but now that he's unavailable, you really got to kind of see what else is out there, what else might work, and maybe you try to emphasize that a little bit just simply to see what it looks like, and you find something pretty positive. I agree with you. That could be one of the things that we look at just as an opportunity that hasn't really presented itself in previous years. I like what Josh Carty did too. He made kicks, and I know that I beat this drum over and over again because I think it's that important that the Rams last season were one of the worst field goal kicking teams in the whole league, and I think it ultimately affected the way that they went about that playoff game. It affected the way they went about the late part of the season. And Carty wasn't bombing 60-yarders, but what he did is he made the kicks that you needed to make, and I really do think that's a big part of it. I also thought it was pretty funny to listen to Sean McVay talk about the new kickoff rule. I don't think he likes it, right? He's like, it's a very forward-looking play. It is weird. Yeah, it is weird. And, I don't know where I am until we see it for about 5 or 6 real weeks and how often how often a real play results in it. I think we'll know. I still think there's a real chance that a year from now we're talking about, my God, what did we do last year with that kickoff rule? And it'll be long gone. But I'm excited to see what it looks like. And I don't think anybody's going to have a real good idea of what that is until real games start because nobody's going to show you anything in the preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big takeaway for me when he was talking about that was finding a way to make an advantage out of it. How do you create
Yeah.
an advantage from it? So they're only going to be able to do that with experience. But yeah, that was another positive for sure was the performance of Josh Carty. He was 4 for 4 for the end of game field goals. He had a 32, a 39, a 44, and one at around 50. So that definitely is positive. We know him and Tanner Brown, there's a little bit of a competition there.
Sure.
I think that Cardi ultimately gets the job, and they wanted to get the job because they spent a draft pick on him. So that definitely was a positive. But I think the tight end thing, too, you look at the fact that if Puka does get injured at any point in the season, or Cooper Kupp does get injured at any point during the season, I think that's where you can lean on those tight ends a little more. And the one time they had a really nice, successful driver, one of the successful drives yesterday, it included a Davis Allen catch in the red zone. So I think that you're seeing these tight ends extremely active. They were active yesterday in the 11-on-11s, and I think that there's no doubt about it. If you were going to make a list of the positives from training camp so far, the tight end play has been right at the top. But yeah, absolutely, the kicking was big, and of course, everyone is always interested to know about Stetson Bennett. And Stetson Bennett did get some snaps on Sunday. He got a series, and this is from Jordan Rodriguez, the Athletic, said that he threw a strike up the left hash to rookie undrafted free agent J.J. Lapp. So good for Stetson Bennett out there getting some plays in and making some plays. So they're going to need him.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to need. Like you said, I think this is interesting. Yet, look, if the Rams are going to have a successful season, we know what has to work, right? What has to work is Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Kyren Williams. The offensive line, of course, is a given. Those things need to work. Where it can get interesting and where it can kind of push you to a whole nother level or maybe kind of drop you to a different level is what we don't know about. We don't know about the tight ends. We don't know about multiple levels of the defense. We don't know about the special teams, right? That if the Rams are going to be good, their offense and the big parts, the receivers, the quarterbacks, the running backs, offensive line, they need to be where we think they will probably be. If they're less than that, I don't know if you can cover it with that other stuff. But if those other things get a little better, tight ends are a little better, kicking game's a little better, defense is a little better than maybe we expect, then all of a sudden that's a brand new level. So as long as the expected pieces are where they're supposed to be, I think it's really exciting to where they can go if those other places kind of lift their levels a little bit.
No doubt about it. Also, if you're looking for a positive, no fights. I don't know about you, but when I go to a hockey game, kind of want to see a fight. You know what I mean? So,
of course.
I was scrolling down just waiting for. I don't think we're going to see an Aaron Donald swinging the helmet type thing against the Bengals.
It'll happen. They got two more. They got the Texans practice. They got a Cowboys practice. They'll figure it out. It'll happen. Man.
This is juicy. But a lot of work to do for your Los Angeles Rams. And coming up next, we're continuing our most important Rams series with number 15. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
All right. We all love sports here in the Locked On universe, right? I love them. You love them. D-Mac loves them. We love them so much that you never want them to stop. But right now, we're kind of in that weird spot, right? Baseball's going on, but we don't have football quite yet. Basketball is over. Hockey's over. So you get fewer games. And while it's not quite as busy as you might like, FanDuel lets us all keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open the FanDuel app and dream up bets anytime that we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers, all of us, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. You know what we should do? We should see if there's some way to bet against the Dodger bullpen right now. That's not great. So head on over to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. There's tons of baseball. Go find some baseball, right? FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Travis, here in our third segment, we're picking up on our most important Rams heading into the 2024 season. We're down to number 15, and that is wide receiver Demarcus Robinson. So last June, they added him to be a depth piece. He was behind Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, Tutu Atwell. They signed him to a 1-year, $1.17 million contract. There was not a lot of hype around it. And then you started to see him during training camp. And then you heard about him during the season and how he looked in practice. And then by week 12, he had replaced Tutu Atwell. He was the number 3 receiver. He was basically catching a touchdown every single game. He was really important to Matthew Stafford in that stretch of games that led to a playoff appearance. And you look at his numbers, 16 games, 4 starts, 39 targets, 26 catches, 371 yards, 4 tutties. And he had 1 rush for 23 yards. But they bring him back for $5 million. I think it's a great value deal. And he's going to be important because Puka's banged up. Cooper Kupp gets banged up. He's going to be on the field pretty much 85 to 90% of the time, because last year, 11 personnel, they were in at 90% of the time. So a big year for opportunities for Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, I think he's a great example of you never really know for sure which of these guys that are kind of add-ons late in camp or depth pieces, like you mentioned, turn out to be really important members of your football team. Demarcus Robinson is a great example of that. You know, if we were sitting here early August 2023, I don't think we're saying, hey, who's going to play a big role in this team? It's Demarcus Robinson. It's, hey, if you absolutely need somebody, he could probably fill in for a week or two. Well, he was much better than that. I think this kind of comes back to the first thing that we were talking about, which is Puka Nacua's injury, whether it's minor or something more than that. The more you have to lean on Robinson, I think probably the less effective he gets. I think he's going to be most effective in that role where Cooper Kupp's getting a lot of attention. Puka Nacua is getting a lot of attention. He gets to match up in a much more efficient way. If Puka is less than, if Cooper Kupp is less than, if either of them are missing time, then he's going to draw more attention, which I think will make his effectiveness go down a little bit. He is important, but all of a sudden, let's just say that Nacua or Kupp, both one of them is maybe unavailable for a little period of time. Now all of a sudden you're into your depth right away. And a player like Robinson, we'll see whether or not he can handle that load. I like him as the third guy. I think that he's a pro. I use that all the time on Locked On Rams. The everydayers know that. I use that as the ultimate compliment. He's where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. You could tell that Matthew Stafford really trusted him, so he is an important part of what they do. But if you have to move him up that depth chart, things can change pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's great about Demarcus Robinson is he knows what he is. He knows who he is. He knows he's a W3. He's like a guy that gives you a good big league at bat, right? I mean, that's kind of what he does at the NFL level. And I think Tutu Atwell, obviously hasn't truly figured himself out at the NFL level. I mean, people forget that he hadn't played wide receiver until he got to college at South Carolina. Whereas someone like Demarcus Robinson, he knows his identity. And two, if you look at his depth of target, I mean, Tutu Atwell's supposed to stretch the field. Last year, Atwell's depth of target was 11.5. Robinson was 13.2. So, I mean, that definitely is something that is underrated about Robinson. Kind of all he does go out there and kind of make plays and produce and be consistent. So I think he's going to be a big part of this offense for sure. I agree with you, though. I mean, if he's a 1 or a 2, that really is not the explosive type of receiver that someone like Matthew Stafford, I think, really needs to complement, of course, his skill set. But as a WR3 with those guys healthy and producing to their high levels, I think he can absolutely make this an extremely potent offense and give you one of the better 3 wide receivers in the NFL. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.